Right, so shall we get started? Welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar about the IRM's International Certificate in Enterprise Risk Management. In this session, we're going to explore the new course syllabus to understand why the updates are relevant to today's risk professionals and organizations. But first, let's deal with some technical points. If you have sound problems, then I'm afraid it's likely to be an issue at your end, and there isn't anything we can do to tweak or help you in real time. However, you will be able to access the recording afterwards, so you can catch up with the webinar. And if you have any questions as we go along, then type them in the question box, and we'll see how many we can tackle at the end of the presentation. So, welcome and introductions. Today, my name is Morais. To start with, I am the Student Services Manager here at the IRM, and I have taken the International Certificate in Enterprise Risk Management during the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to discuss how the events over the past 2 years have helped shape the new syllabus, I'm joined by the course developers, Kate Boothroyd, Sarah Gordon, and John Crawley, and also the module coach, Starr. They have all also taken the IRM exams, and I'm delighted to be joined by such a clever panel to discuss the updated syllabus today. So here's our agenda for the day. First, we will look at why get qualified and why choose the Institute of Risk Management for a professional qualification in enterprise risk management. Then we'll dig into the new IRM syllabus, first looking at the content overview, then the course resources, so what comes with the course, and finally the assessment format. Thirdly, we will look at the enrollment process and how does it work. Then we will move on to the blended learning workshops and developing as a risk professional, and we wrap up talking a little bit about the IRM community and how to get involved. So without further ado, let's look at the global context and why a risk qualification from the IRM might help you supercharge your career. I wanted to play a short video before I start talking about the IRM. So could you please confirm you can see the video? Just thumbs up.
Not yet, Lucas, we can't, sorry. We're seeing your PowerPoint slides at the moment.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Lucas, the sound doesn't seem to be coming through on the video.
Sorry, I think there's an issue with the sound. So apologies to everyone. We will share the slides afterwards with a link to the video so you can watch it. But essentially, as the video is showing, in today's interconnected world events such as the pandemic, the war, and economic and social and environmental crisis, the risk landscape is it's changing at a rapid pace, and we need to think about being more proactive and less reactive. And that's how enterprise risk management will help organizations to thrive. And the demand for financial and non-financial risk managers is growing rapidly in the world. So let me just put in the presentation mode. There we go. So what is the role of the Institute of Risk Management on that? So we are the leading professional body for enterprise risk management worldwide, and we help build excellence in risk management and improve the way organizations work. And we do that by providing qualifications, training, publishing thought leadership and research, and also setting the professional standards for risk managers. So defining the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that risk managers need to navigate in today's complex global business environment. And now we will look at the syllabus and how it will help you gain the skills to develop, adapt, and implement robust risk frameworks to improve your company's resilience. So this course has been designed to introduce students to the fundamental theory, management, and application of enterprise risk management to ensure timely organizational success. And to help us tackle the content overview of the course, as I said, no one better than the course developers and the module coach. So thank you, Kate, Sarah, and John, and Sally for joining us today. I would like to start by saying that the first fundamental change I noticed in the syllabus is the structure, and especially for Module 1, because I can see that now Module 1 covers the entire risk management process. So, Kate, could you please start by giving us an overview of Module 1?
Thanks, Lucas. No, you're right. We have just slightly changed the structure for the new certificate. So in Module 1, we cover the breadth of risk management. And what we've tried to do is to pull out at the beginning the key concepts of risk management. So we're all on the same page, just bringing everybody up to speed in terms of concepts from or definitions from different standards as well. So we're looking at the standards, we're looking at how different, what the different approaches from those standards and frameworks are, and trying to compare them really, just so we're all on the same page on that. And then in the strategic planning, we're thinking about how we apply enterprise risk management. So it's thinking about looking at risk management across the organisation. So we touch on a few different approaches, but we do more of that in Module 2. And then we go into the main process. So we've looked a little bit in the key concepts and in the strategic planning around the principles and the framework for risk management. And then we go through the process of risk management in units 3 and 4. And we try to cover the whole process in those two units. So they're quite full, but we're looking at the context and objectives. So what's going on in the world around us and what we're trying to achieve. Risk assessment. So we're following ISO 31000 a little bit here. So the risk assessment, looking at risk analysis, evaluation, and risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. And then thinking, okay, if we've got these risks, which ones do we need to manage? And if we're going to do something about them, how are we going to manage those? Thinking about real controls, and then going through the monitoring, reviewing, and reporting. So that covers the main steps of the process. And then, because some of those questions that we have about what risks we should manage involve the culture and the appetite, risk appetite within an organisation, we go through that. And then tying back into the kind of the governance side and the structure of risk management, we pull out the corporate governance and the risk assurance regimes that organisations will have. So that's what we have in Module 1 now.
Thank you, Kate. Now I would like to talk a little bit more in detail about each of the units that Module 1 covers. And my first question is for the module coach, Sally. Sally, why is it important to build a solid foundation when it comes to the concepts and definitions of what is risk and what is risk management? And how does the course address that?
Yeah, so the aim for most practitioners within their roles is to successfully facilitate the management of their organisation's risks. But as I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, risk management isn't black and white. There's lots of different ways of approaching it depending on the context in which you're applying it. So in order to be able to select the best approach and adapt our approach to suit the situation, we first need to build a really strong understanding of exactly what risk and risk management are, and how and why definitions can vary across different contexts. So Unit 1 addresses this not just through an exploration of definitions, but also by looking at how risk management has evolved in recent decades, and why it's so important for organisations in today's world.
Thank you very much. My second question is to Sarah. Sarah, the course compares a range of different risk management standards, but it's structured around the ISO 31000. Can you just tell me why ISO 31000 is the go-to standard for enterprise risk management, and what other standards are covered in the course?
Yeah, certainly, Lucas. So ISO 31000 is perhaps the most widely used standard globally. Obviously, organizations that are predominantly based in the USA perhaps pertain to use COSO, for example, as their main go-to standard. And then, of course, organisations that perhaps have got more to do with, say, the UK government might be using the UK government's Orange Book. So there are a wide variety of standards out there. But the good thing is that, and don't tell them this, they all basically say the same thing. So yes, we've gone with ISO 31000 because it's the most commonly used one. But what you'll see here is that we do try to bring in other language, etc., throughout the course as well. So this course is equally as appropriate for people who tend to use some of the other standards within their workplace. Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you, Sarah.
And Lucas, if I could just jump in on that, we do build upon this a little bit more when we come into later modules. So in module 2, a lot of what we've learned based on ISO and COSO, when we look at some specific lens through which to look at risks in organizations like insurance, like project management, like IT, like legal, like banking, we introduce some other frameworks or standards. And again, there's different words and vocabulary we use here, but we bring in the solvencies, we bring in the Basels, we bring in the new ISO standard that has been designed for the legal profession. But they're all, as Sarah said, they're all exactly the same thing.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Sarah and John. And that leads me nicely to my next question, which is, you mentioned about different approaches to risk management in the banking, legal, and et cetera, et cetera. Can you tell us, what is the difference between enterprise risk management and traditional risk management, and why is it so important to talk about it now?
On you go, John.
What's the difference between the two? There's many different ways that you can look at this. Enterprise risk management is all about the wholesomeness of risk management being part of the discipline of management within an organization. So an organization manages itself, and it manages itself from a financial point of view, from a regulatory point of view, from a reputational, from a sales, and likewise from a risk point of view. So it's part of that connectedness, okay, of thinking about the uncertainties that matter within an organization and thinking about them in the context of managing the organization. Traditional risk management was probably more formulaic. It was more rules-based. It was probably more prescriptive, and it had its place in time. But don't forget, risk management was born out of the health and safety industry and the insurance industry, okay, among others. But we've evolved very much, so it's making it more embracing, part of the family, part of the solution, part of making decisions better and making better decisions in an organization. To me, that's what it's about. Great,
thank you very much, John. Then when we talk about strategy planning for ERM in Unit 2, we start by looking at the RASP framework, which stands for Risk Architecture, Strategy, and Protocols. Kate, could you briefly just describe these 3 components of the framework?
Yeah, so it is based on the requirements of a framework from standards like ISO. So ISO has a framework, but within the certificate, we base it on the, as you say, Lucas, the risk management framework. So the risk architecture, so the A in RASP, the risk architecture is around the structure of risk management, and how do you build that into the structure of an organisation, its governance structure, the way it does its reporting, its committees, etc. So it's building risk management into the way the organisation does its business. So I always think of risk architecture as the structure of risk management and building it into that. The risk strategy is the more of the tone from the top. So it is, how do you put a purpose to risk management? You know, what is the reason for doing it for an organisation? And it could be different for different organisations. It's thinking about the risk appetite that an organisation might have, so how much risk it wants to take. So it's that thinking about how risk management is going to work for an organisation and what it's supposed to do for an organisation. And then the protocols are really, it's all of the supporting materials, documentation, whether it's a policy or procedures or manuals, fact sheets, tools, techniques, etc., and systems for risk management. So we talk a little bit about risk management information systems. So it's everything that enables an organisation to do risk management, because you can't just do it because you want to, you need everything there to support that.
Thank you. I can see Sarah was drawing something. Sarah, did you want to add anything to Kate's answer?
No, Kate's answer was beautiful, and I was just getting prepared for the question that I think you might be about to ask me, Lucas.
All right. So the next question is focusing on the strategy aspect of the RASP framework. One of the things that we learn in the course is that there is a tone from the top, as Kate mentioned. And how it's important for risk managers to be discussing that at the strategic level. Would you say over the past 2 years, and the risk management has gained momentum in C-level discussions, and why is it important to be at the strategic level when implementing frameworks? I think this question could be for Sally as well, yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good question. And from my point of view, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, the COVID pandemic clearly had a really devastating impact for many reasons. But one positive outcome that we've seen is that organisations are now taking certain risks more seriously. So those that are perceived to be very unlikely, but with a large impact if they do occur. So whereas in the past, organisational leaders might have disregarded such risks, the pandemic has really opened people's eyes to the importance of planning for that uncertainty. So risk management, I think, has quickly gained a lot of prominence in many organisations over the last couple of years, and otherwise it might not have. And this is really crucial when we're implementing a risk framework, because without the right tone from the top, it's incredibly difficult to influence the culture and the way that risk is perceived and acted on by everyone else in the organisation, and that's explored later on in the module as well.
Great, thank you very much, Sally. And now the question for Sarah is, Unit 2 presents a range of different risk management processes, and then 4 simple steps of risk management. How does this help students to understand the different processes out there?
Awesome. Thanks, Lucas. So yeah, I'm referring back to all of those international standards that are out there, and I'm sure all of us in our own organizations have our own versions of a risk management process. Certainly some qualifications out there make you sit and learn all of these different processes and the differences between them, and there's some use in that. But ultimately, they can all be boiled down to 4 very simple steps. So step number 1, which is what I was drawing on the board behind me, is all about understanding the world in which we're operating. So both our internal and our external context, and how the external world can impact on us and how we might impact on the world round about us and how that's changing. But also within that, what is it that we're trying to achieve? So what are our objectives? Step number 2 is then when we get into our risk assessment. So identifying our risks, understanding them, and then saying, well, so what? Do we care? Do we need to change something? Step number 3 is the change. So that's where we actually manage our risks. So traditionally, perhaps people thought that risk management was just doing a risk assessment. Now, of course, that is a glorious thing to behold, but actually there's very little use in doing a risk assessment unless you then do something with it. And so that doing something with it is where we hit our management of risk. So maintaining or changing something to do with those risks. And then into step number 4, which is the monitoring, reviewing and reporting on those risks. Now, this then allows you to go back to the beginning and ask the big question, which is really the big question around risk management, which is, given the context in which we're trying to operate and those potential threats and opportunities, i.e. those risks that we face, and our ability to manage them, can we actually achieve our objectives? That's the big question that we're asking ourselves. And so what you find within module 1 is that we have in unit 3, the first 2 bits of that process, and then in unit 4, the second 2 bits of that process. So hopefully it's nice and logical for everyone. Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you, Sarah. No, that's great. So students are then introduced to these 4 simple steps, and then they get presented with the actual, with the risk management process following ISO 31000, which leads me to unit 3 about context, objectives and risk assessment. And my question is for Sally. In unit 3, we then start looking at the context in which organizations are shaped and before starting assessing risks. This is important to allow practitioners to identify the uncertainties that matter or the risks. What kind of tools can you use to establish the context, and what are the tools that are taught in the course?
Yeah, so Unit 3 explores a number of different tools that can help with understanding the organisation's context, and these include the extended enterprise, stakeholder mapping, horizon scanning, and also PESTLE analysis. You might already be familiar with some of these, especially PESTLE analysis, because that's a very well-known tool for analysing the external business environment. But if you aren't already familiar with them, then the course introduces you to them really nicely, and it's something that you'll come up across throughout the units as well.
Great, thank you, Sally. Now about the second word in this unit title, objectives, and my question is for John. John, it's important for risk managers to be secure about framing objectives, because as we know, risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives, and if you get the objectives wrong, you'll get the management of risks also wrong as a result of that. And then how does the course help students to critique the framing of objectives and the relevance to an organization's strategy?
So let's just unpick that question a little bit. So you said, you know, if we get the objectives wrong, okay, from a risk management point of view. So I think what we probably mean is if we get our understanding of the organization's objectives wrong, then, you know, we can end up incorrectly guiding the organization as to how to think about the risks that it's facing. But it's an interesting question, okay, because we find in practice in many organizations, getting this part right and getting this part off on the right footing can be difficult, because organizations sometimes have statements that are really more vision and mission type statements rather than detailed objective statements. So from a risk management point of view, what's important for us is to understand, like, what is the organization actually trying to do? Like, in simple words, what do we do around here? Okay, so and like, you know, what are the steps that we need to have in place then to do what it is we're trying to do? So understanding what it is we're trying to do, both strategically, operationally, and in many cases from a project management point of view, because of course a lot of our organizations spend a lot of time running various different projects. Understand the detail, the granularity of that, and on the course, okay, we spend a good bit of time as well as just making sure that students understand the link between strategy and key performance indicators. Because if we understand the key performance indicators, i.e. those things that the organization uses on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to measure what they're doing, okay, then we better understand how we can understand the uncertainties associated with the achievement of those key performance indicators, which of course all roll up, okay, into the objectives into the organization's objectives and strategy and vision.
Oh, great, thank you very much, John, for your answer. The next question is to Sarah. The unit 3 then ends with the risk assessment, which is we've set the context, set your objectives. And now ISO 31000 breaks the risk assessment down into 3 parts: identification, what are the risks, analysis, how are they important, and the evaluation. Do we need to act? Could you give us a few examples of risk identification techniques that are taught in the course? And also, as we've seen, the pandemic was something that was very unexpected for a lot of enterprises. How does the course address this kind of risks that perhaps are not under the radar?
Yeah, sure. So, in the world of risk assessment, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different tools that you can use to help you either identify, analyze, or evaluate those risks. And some tools help you with all 3. Some of them are very specific to one area. Some tools might be very qualitative, and so therefore you'll be looking for people to brainstorm and to share stories, and you might be doing some horizon scanning, so saying, imagine what the world might look like in 30 years time. Okay, what does the world look like around about us there? So those would be kind of qualitative tools. You also get your quantitative tools, and that's where all of your mathematics come out to play and your statistics. And so for those, that's where we bring in different data sets and we say, okay, well, what is that numerical data actually telling us? And again, for some areas of risk, they can be very helpful. Finally, you then get where you bring the 2 together and you have semi-quantitative risk assessment techniques where you've got some numbers, but to be honest, you're also applying an awful lot of subjectivity, perhaps, to some of those risks that you're suggesting. So to come to the second part of your question with regards to those risks that we don't necessarily see coming. So with regards to COVID, it is brave of an organisation to now admit that they didn't see COVID coming, or a global pandemic. So we all know that there is a potential for another global pandemic very soon. Okay, we're well aware of that now. But there are some organisations who, and also the world's media and leaders perhaps sometimes refer to those risks that we don't see coming as being black swans. And so those risks there, sometimes people say, well, I just didn't know. They were unknown. So what could we actually have done about it? So one of the tools that we share with everybody is the concept of swans and elephants, where we talk about, okay, there's some aspects that we want to think about here, which actually we know everything about. They're facts, technically speaking, they're not risks, they're issues, but it's really good to know about them because that then allows us to do trends and stuff like that, to see what might come next. We then have acknowledged risks. So those are the ones that we're talking about, and we can model and we can play with. We then have those unknown unknowns, or those surprises or black swans, and there will always be some of them out there. And we just need to keep our minds open for what could be in that box. And then finally, we have the unacknowledged risks, i.e. the elephants in the room. Some organizations call them gorillas or rhinos or ostriches. Doesn't matter, just give them the name of an animal. And those elephants are the really interesting ones, because those are the risks that somebody in the organization knows about, or we collectively know about, but that we're not sharing. And that's a tool that personally, I think I use, and I'm looking at Kate and John here, I think we use that every day in terms of trying to say, well, what are we missing here? What do we know about that we're missing? Because if we can bring those down into our acknowledged risk territory, then collectively we know more. And so the potential for a surprise, i.e. a black swan, decreases. So finally on that, if every organization or as a world we'd gone, yeah, we really think there is potential for a global pandemic here, perhaps we would have been more prepared for what then came at us, and fewer people would have been able to say, oh, but I just didn't know, and kind of almost use that as a bit of a delay to then actually pull your socks up and get the controls in place. Thanks, mate.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Now, having established the context and identified the risks that matter, the next stage is logically to manage, respond, or treat or control the identified risks. So, Kate, what does an organization need to think about before deciding to manage a risk, and what type of responses are there, and what are covered in Unit 4, perhaps?
Thanks, Lucas. So when we're thinking about managing our risks, we need to go back to the steps before, at least in terms of the risk evaluation. So which of the risks do you think you need to do something about to bring them down to an acceptable level? Because you can't manage every single risk in the same way. So we need to go through that prioritization process, but still say, do I need to do anything more to manage that risk, or is it acceptable to me, either because I don't want to do anything else or because I can't do anything else? So when we're managing our risks, we need to think about that. And we have focused on the ISO 31000 techniques or types of responses, because they cover both threat and opportunity. We have pulled in the 4 T's and the 5 E's from Hopkins. So that is the terminate, transfer, treat and tolerate, and the for the 4 T's. And then so you're testing me now. And then in the 5 E's, because I'm not looking at any notes, we have the we have the explore.
Hopkins hat.
I know, I don't have it with me. It's over there. The Hopkins hat, everybody, by the way, is just putting the book on your head. That's what we mean by that. So you have the explore, you have the exit or expand, the exploit or the exist in terms of opportunities. So the 4 T's are threats, the 5 E's are opportunities. However, we do note that they are becoming less common in usage within organisations, which is why we put the ISO 31000 response strategies first, because they help you deal with both sides of the risk coin, both threat and opportunity in there.
Okay, great. So that's something new as well for this syllabus.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate. And Sarah, I know you mentioned a little bit about why monitoring is then the final step, but I would like to ask Sally, why is monitoring and reporting risks so important, and how it fits into the risk management process?
So as Kate mentioned earlier, when we were looking at an overview of Unit 1, when we look at risk management standards, pretty much all standards will include monitoring and reporting stages in one way or another. They'll call it something different, but effectively that's what it is. And these are really important stages within that process. Monitoring is essential because risk management isn't a one-off activity. We discussed context briefly earlier on, and this context is constantly changing as the world around us changes. So it's really important that we monitor our risks to ensure that they also haven't changed, and we need to kind of change our approach to the risks. And then similarly with regard to reporting, it's really important that we communicate the information that we've gathered with the right people, so that risk information can then be considered within decision making within the organisation on a day-to-day basis. Going back to what John was saying earlier about traditional versus current thinking around risk management, in that now risk should be considered within kind of everyday decision and management processes. There is a lot more to monitoring and reporting, as you'll discover throughout the course, but hopefully that's a kind of good brief overview.
Great, yes, thank you, Sally. Now we move on to Unit 5, which is all about risk culture and appetite. And the IRM defines risk culture as the values, beliefs, knowledge, and understanding about a risk shared by a group of people with a common purpose. Sarah, why is it important to establish a good and strong risk culture in organizations?
That's a massive question, Lucas. And so very concisely, a strong risk culture means that you have openness, trust, transparency within that organization. So risk management information, be it about things that are bad or things that could be good, can flow throughout the organization. You get feedback loops, etc. And that's what you're really looking for. Now, some organizations have that naturally. Other organizations, it takes a huge amount of effort to put that in place. Yeah, that particular unit has got lots of juicy stuff in it. So I won't steal the thunder or release any secrets any further than that.
Great, thank you. And then the unit also talks about risk appetite. And for me, this was quite a complex topic when I was studying the course. So I wanted to ask John, because it took me a while to get my head around all of the concepts that there are around risk appetite. John, in a nutshell, could you just explain what are the concepts around risk appetite, and how does the certificate helps the students to understand everything?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, risk appetite is about asking yourself that question: is what I'm about to do okay or not okay? Okay, so is it something that is a risk that we're comfortable with? So appetite is the amount of risk that we're willing to seek or accept in the pursuit of our objectives. So, you know, in a nutshell, it's okay, it's not okay. But in the course, we go into it in a good bit more detail, and we have actually straightened this out. This is one of the changes that we've put in place on the new syllabus, because it was a bit unwieldy. It is generally a little bit unwieldy in industry and in organizations generally. So we spend a lot of time just trying to simplify the process. But in a nutshell, is it okay? Is it not okay? Is this a risk we're willing to seek or accept? Yes or no? And if it is, it's within our appetite. If it's not, then we need to go and do something about it.
Great, thank you. And then the final unit of Module 1 is Corporate Governance and Risk Assurance. And my question goes for Kate. Kate, why is it important for risk managers to understand the corporate governance models and the types of board structure, and how the course addresses that?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of governance, not just corporate governance, but governance generally, because you have to have a kind of incorporated organization. So we focus on private companies, but also link this into the public sector and the third sector in terms of how boards are held accountable for what the business is doing. So it's no good, a board saying, oh, I didn't know about that, or nobody told me. We need to think about how we tie risk management into how the organisation is run and how the organisation is run well. And the board has responsibility from a corporate governance point of view. And I think this is across the world. It doesn't matter if it's UK corporate governance or elsewhere, for making sure that the business is viable and has a going concern. But part of that is understanding the risks and the internal control structure. So we need to understand the corporate governance approach so that we can give assurance to the board that risks are being managed effectively. So that the board can go out and say, yes, we feel that we are managing the risks properly, and we can sign off on that. So but it does tie back also into that risk management framework. How do we build risk management into the way that we report on risk and what the board wants to see, and everything else? So yeah, it's a very important aspect. But if you're outside of a private company, it is still relevant, whether you're in the third sector or whether you're in the public sector.
Great, thank you very much, Kate. And my final question around Module 1 for Sarah, around risk assurance. What are some of the assurance models covered in the certificate, and why is this module wrapped up with risk assurance topic?
So obviously, I mean, assurance is one of the world's most exciting topics, and I say that with much love and respect to all of our lovely auditors of the world. Of course, there's always a little bit of rivalry between risk management and audit, which is a good thing. The main model that we look at here, of course, is the 3 lines of assurance, which has been put together by the Institute of Internal Auditors, and so I'm sure lots of people will be aware of that model. And what we do here is really say, okay, well, what does this mean for a risk manager? It's quite clear what it means for internal audit, for example, but what does it mean for a risk manager? And the reason perhaps that this comes at the end of Module 1 is, of course, I mean, it's with assurance that we check to see, okay, is our risk management actually effective? Is it worth our time? Is it worth the effort? Or where can we perhaps change some things? Where are there some gaps that need to be addressed?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sarah. So as we've seen, the module 1, principles of risk and risk management, just help you build that strong, solid foundation around the concepts and definitions of risk, and covers the whole risk management process. And then building on the foundations introduced in module 1, module 2 explores the practical aspects of risk management. Kate, could you do the same that you did for module 1 and just give us like a brief overview of module 2?
Yep, sure, of course. So module 2, so where I said module 1 is the breadth, we go into more depth in module 2, and we start to bring in some new areas that risk practitioners really should know about. So some of these are new to the certificate, or are augmented by the update to the certificate as well. So in the risk and strategy, we start to think, and John was mentioning this before, how does risk management tie into the strategy? And for those of you who know COSO, the Enterprise Risk Management Framework from COSO, the new version from 2017, it points out that people were doing risk management in terms of implementing the strategy, but we need to think about how we do risk management in terms of setting the strategy. So we tie that in and how we put strategy together in Unit 7. So that's slightly different. Unit 8 is, I wouldn't say completely new because we did some of this in the old certificate, but there's certainly a lot more in here in terms of sustainability. So we're thinking about sustainability with all of the things that are going on around climate change, ESG, you know, the environment, social and governance. So how do we act as an organisation from a sustainability point of view, and how does risk management tie into that? Then we do the same with resilience. So how are we now a more resilient organisation, and how risk management ties into the resilience piece and making an organisation more agile. And that ties back into one of the first things that you said, Lucas, from a point of view of, you know, what happened from a COVID aspect, or what's going on in the world around us. That how does an organisation maintain that agility? Approaches to risk management we've already touched in Unit 1, but in Unit 1, Module 1, but in Module 2 we wanted to take apart those different approaches that people might have, just so that people can focus in those different areas, and I know we'll cover that in a moment anyway. Then embedding and maintaining risk management. So how do you actually take all of this stuff that we've learned, and how do you make it really work within an organisation? Because theory is great, but the practical hints and tips that you need, that's what we brought into Unit 11. And then we finish off in high, thinking about you as practitioners, for those people who are coming on as students, you know, what do you need in order to be a good practitioner? Where you might need to go for help? And what are the key points that you need to have as a practitioner? So it takes all of that information and thinks about how that applies to you as a student, and then an ongoing practitioner as you take that further along in your work environment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kate. That's a great overview of the module. Now let's do the same that we did for Module 1 and dig into the specific units. And my first question about Unit 7, Risk and Strategy, is for Sally. We've talked a lot about how risk and strategy are interlinked, and I just wanted to get a perspective of how this plays out in the real world, and what are the things that risk managers are concerned about nowadays when it comes to strategy.
Yeah, so risk management and strategy are very closely linked. For most organizations, risk won't be a driver of their strategy, but every strategy does come with risk. And we do need to take into account things like our risk appetite when we're formulating strategy. So the two do really go hand in hand. As Kate just mentioned in the overview, within Module 2, it does start to go more into depth, and we start to look at practical application. So just to break this unit down a little bit more and to add to Kate's overview, this unit firstly will introduce you to strategy itself, looking at how strategy is defined and formulated, and it then goes on to explore that relationship between strategy and risk management in a lot more detail. And then finally, it ends with an overview of a number of different strategy models used by organizations from a risk management perspective, and that's where that real life application really comes in. And the tools that we'll look at here are things like SWOT analysis, PESTLE again. So like I said before, a lot of the concepts and the tools that are introduced earlier on are built on throughout the units and the modules, and also VMost. So yeah, again, just some tools for real kind of practical real life application.
Great, thank you, Sally. Next, we talk about Unit 8 and sustainability. And as Kate mentioned, this is not 100% new, but for me, it is kind of new because I took the certificate in 2020, and back then we would focus only on corporate social responsibility, and now the unit has changed to sustainability. And my question goes to Sarah, because I know that topic is close to your heart. How are risk managers linked with the organizational sustainability, and what are the opportunities and challenges here? What does the course bring?
So Lucas, you are a brave man asking me to talk about sustainability when we've only got 15 minutes left of this webinar. But in essence, as I'm sure we're all aware, sustainability, ESG, or environment, social governance, etc., is becoming an increasingly important topic at all levels of every organisation that we work in. And what we find is that risk management is the mechanism through which tangible sustainability can actually be delivered. So in a world where lots of organizations are greenwashing, actually it's risk management where we can say, hang on, what are the real threats and opportunities here, and what are we going to do about them? And so as a result, what are our transition plans? What are our improvement plans? And that's what's explored within the sustainability module. And so, yeah, I like this one. I think it's really exciting. Of course, it builds on what you learnt with your corporate social responsibility. But as you'll see here, that is a tiny wee bit within the broader portfolio that is sustainability management. Thanks, Lucas.
No worries. Thank you, Sarah. Next, we talk about Unit 9, resilience. And my question goes to John. Perhaps one of the hot topics as well around risk management is resilience, considering the rapidly changing world that we're living in. John, could you explain the essence of resilience and how risk management will support agility and innovation in organizations?
Absolutely, Lucas. I mean, this is an area that it's really this unit runs core to risk management, because resilience and agility are all about doing things and doing things successfully in an organization to make sure that we achieve our objectives. So we explore in the unit within this module the resilient things that actually help us. If we could almost think about them as a preventative controls to make sure that we can stop bad things from happening and that we can encourage good things to happen. So building resilience to assist us. But then we also go over to the other side and say, yeah, if stuff happens that's bad, how do we recover from it? Or in other words, how agile are we? Or if stuff is happening a lot better than we'd originally anticipated, how do we leverage that to say, hang on, there's a better future that's available to us, so we can be more agile to outperform our objectives. And in this unit, we actually tell it through the parable of procrastinating Polly, agile Annie, firefighting Freddy, and tumbling Tommy. But you got to sign up to actually hear all about those characters.
I would sign up just to hear about these characters. Thank you, John. The next unit, I'm just conscious of time, is approaches to risk management. And Kate, we talked already about the approaches to risk management that are covered in the course. What will students gain from learning these different approaches in a nutshell?
Yeah, so very quickly, she says, what we're trying to get you to understand is that there are different approaches that already exist within an organisation. And from the ISO 31000, one of the principles is that you integrate with all organisational activities. So it's having a student having that understanding of the different language, which Sarah mentioned before, that you might find from a financial perspective or a project perspective or ESG or, the different areas or legal, just so that you can make sure that when you're doing your enterprise risk management, you can touch into and integrate into those existing risk management processes within an organisation, or recognise when you're talking to a different organisation where their focus is coming from. So construction will be focusing on projects, they'll be looking at project risk management. So it's just having that understanding as a practitioner of the different languages that are out there and where you might need to touch base with those.
Great, thank you, Kate. The 11th unit is called Embedding and Maintaining Risk Management. Sarah, this unit focuses a lot on risk maturity. Could you briefly explain why the unit talks about risk maturity and what will students achieve with this unit?
Yes, so risk maturity often is something that's addressed at the beginning of a course rather than at the end. But what's quite nice about doing it at the end is it means we know all of the detail that sits behind each of the different points in a risk maturity scale. And so what we can do then is design our own risk maturity scale or journey for our own organisation and make sure that that is wrapped up in things like risk culture, as I was mentioning earlier, which is where you're really trying to get into very mature risk management that might be where you're trying to get to. So again, we look at a range of different models within that and also really test them to say, okay, well, what would be most practical for ourselves, depending on what organisation we happen to work in.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Then the final unit, 12, risk management competencies, is dedicated to the risk management professional and the skills and competencies necessary to thrive in the profession and the roadmap to get there. So as well as the value that risk managers bring to the organization. So my final question goes to the entire panel. If you were to pick one of the competencies to highlight, the ones that are included in the course. Which one would you pick and why? Starting with Kate.
Yeah, I'm off mute, so I'll go first. Just a point that we bring out both the technical and the behavioural competencies, which do go hand in hand. So because we're doing, Sarah and I are doing a course this afternoon for a client on this, I'm going to pick the facilitation skills. So how do you facilitate the identification, analysis, evaluation, context and objectives, all the different steps of the process? So how do you help people understand what their risks are? And how do they helping them understand how they can manage those risks. So I'm going to go with the facilitation skills one as my one. Sorry, that's I get it first. That's the one I'm going to choose. Thanks, Lucas.
Sarah.
Okay, I'll go next, and then I'll pass off to John, and then I think we could go Sally, because I'm sure she's got some awesome ones to finish with. Actually, I'm potentially going to go off script here. I'm going to say that be curious and actually open to getting it wrong. Now, I'm sure that there's better words for articulating that, but as a risk manager, you have to be prepared to go, what about that area over there? Let's go test it. Let's go see. And that is a core skill. So actually, let's round that up with courage. You have to be courageous to be a risk manager in order to be able to go do that. Thanks, Lucas. Over to you, John.
So I'm going to stick with what I wrote when I was writing this unit, and I'm going to pick out the behavioural one. And surprise, surprise, I'm going to go for the same one that Kate went with, which is facilitation, every day of the week, twice on a Sunday. Okay, I just think we need to be able to talk. That's our job as risk managers, is to be able to talk, to ask questions, to be curious, and to go into the language that Sarah has been using there as well. Facilitation, go for it.
Thank you, John.
There's a bit of a common theme here, but I'm in good company. I chose facilitation as well. That's because workshop facilitation, for me personally, is one of my favourite parts of my role as a risk manager, because it's an opportunity to really engage people with risks rather than just, spreadsheets and data. We don't often get the chance to work with groups of colleagues with the sole purpose of discussing risks. So when we do, I think it's crucial that we use this time as well as we possibly can. For me, risk workshops should be fun and engaging, and when done well, they're a real opportunity to change the way people perceive risk in our organisations. But good risk workshops require good facilitators, and it's a really, really tricky skill to master. So I was very happy to see that there's a whole section dedicated to this in the new syllabus.
Lucas, can I just add on to that with because we've all chosen facilitation. I just mentioned as well things like being able to analyze all this data that you're gathering, being able to use that data. And I think picking up with which everybody said about communication, how do we talk to people and how do we influence them? Not in terms of I want you to do this, but how do we get people to think about risk, engage in the process? So that communication that Sally was talking about, very, very key. So that's some of the other skills that we have in this unit.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I think one of the things to add that when I was reading the course content is that all of these skills are transferable. So, and to wrap up the course content overview, there are no pre-requirements for anyone to enroll on this course. So you'll learn everything back to back. And if you're not perhaps familiar with risk management, which is my case, when I took the course, I was still able to learn everything and apply the learnings in my current role. And yeah, so thank you all so much for getting through all of the course content. I will now just briefly talk about the course resources. So how you're going to learn everything that we just talked about. And yeah, so the first resource that it's included in the course fee is the student handbook, and it contains it's your life guide as a IRM student journey. So all the policies and procedures, what is expected from you when undertaking the course. And then the next one is the Moodle lessons and the essential readings. So everything that you will learn, it's in a virtual learning environment called Moodle. All of the lessons there, the content is breakdown into units as we have seen. And the units will then have reference reading and essential readings. The core textbook for this course is the Fundamentals of Risk Management by Paul Hopkin and Clive Thompson, 6th edition. We then go on to learning activities, which are a form of consolidating your knowledge, and these are all available for you in the virtual learning environment as well. Then we have a wonderful module coach for this qualification specifically, Sally Starr. Sally is there to help you with technical queries, engage in discussions, and answer any questions you might have about the course itself. We also have a discussion forum in the virtual learning environment where you can engage with the module coach, but also with your colleagues that are taking the course at the same time that you are. So it's a great opportunity for you to network and engage in discussions. Finally, in the virtual learning environment, there is a sample exam paper for Module 1. We'll talk shortly about the assessment format, which has changed slightly, but yeah, there is a sample exam paper for Module 1. The next resource are webinars and videos. So this cohort actually will have 7 webinars and videos included in the course, which is an upgrade from the previous cohort, which just had 3 webinars and videos. So there's a lot more support in video format for you. And then you also have student membership for the duration of your course. So when you join the IRM, you automatically become a student member if you enroll on a qualification. And last but not least, a dedicated student support team that is there to help you every step of the journey as a student, as an IRM student. So these are all the resources you have. As you can see, a lot of support included in the course for you to help you learn everything that we just talked about. Now the assessment format. The assessment has changed slightly, so it's now a summative assessment, and Module 1 is formed of 1 multiple choice questions exam. This exam has 60 questions and is a computer-based exam taken at Pearson VUE test centers, available worldwide. So wherever you are in the world, you are able to take the multiple choice exam. It values 40% of your final mark, and then the second part of the Module 1 assessment is an essay assignment, which is worth 60% of your final mark. And the essay will be a critical evaluation of a set topic around the subjects we talked about in Module 1, 2,000 words, and you can submit this via the virtual learning environment. Module 2 is then formed of 2 written assignments of 2,000 words each, and is also critical evaluation of a set topic and submitted by Moodle. And question for the course developers around the assessment format, which has changed from the previous syllabus. Is the essay assignment, because previously students would just take 2 MCQ exams, is the essay assignment a form of students to demonstrate their learning better than just answering multiple choice questions?
Can I just chip in, and then the others can chip in too? It's a much better way, I think, to get students to be able to share their learning. Some of the stuff we're asking, just doing a multiple choice question really doesn't get to the depth of that. And also, it's not us testing their learning, it's them checking whether they've understood it before they use it in practice when they get into their work environment. So I think it's a better way, especially for Module 2, when we're getting into the depth and asking, getting people to think about how they're going to apply risk management.
And it allows students to, I suppose, bring in real world examples that they have themselves in their own lives, in their own organizations. And because, I suppose, this is the way we're now doing it, it can be more dynamic. So as we go over time, okay, things will change, the world will continue to change, but the principles are still the same, but it's the adaptation of them, okay, that changes. So it's more insightful, probably a little bit more work. Okay, but it's designed, Module 2 is designed to be very much getting into sort of people understanding us understanding in the IRM their depth of the knowledge of the concept, because the world is not easy out there from a risk management point of view.
Great, thank you. I know we're just about to hit 1 hour, but if you don't mind staying for another 5 minutes so we can wrap up. I'll just go over the enrollment process now. There is a June 2023 cohort, which is the next available exam session. And the steps are simple. You can enroll online. I will share with you a QR code shortly for you to enroll. You study by distance learning. And there's 6 to 9 months to complete the course, depending on when you enroll, just because this course is self-directed. So once you enroll, you get access to the learning materials, and then you would sit the examinations, which are for Module 1 on the week between the 19th and 23rd of June. So you can pick one of these dates to sit your multiple choice question exam. And you need to submit your 3 assignments by the end of June 2023. 6 weeks after that, the results are announced on the 14th of August, and providing that you pass both modules, you are then admitted to the certificate membership of the Institute, and you can use the post-nominals IRMCert after your name, as well as a whole range of things that being a certificate member of the IRM encompasses. Briefly, the blended learning workshops, I will just pass the word to Kate now. She's one of the blended learning tutors.
Yes, thanks, Lucas, along with John and Sarah as well. So for those of you who don't want to just learn by distance learning, you can enroll to do some, I say face-to-face, I mean via virtual workshops, as we do at the moment, in terms of understanding the materials and getting advice from the tutors as well. So, as well as the stuff that Sally does very well with you through Moodle. So the workshop 1 is an introduction or an induction to the 2 certificates, 2 modules for the certificate. So getting you to think about how Moodle works for those of you who aren't used to it, what the process is for learning, and just navigation through the two modules. Workshops 2 and 3, we put those together. There are 2 days together in the middle of that 6-month, 9-month process, where we take you through both modules in a lot more detail, and we explain some of the key points in the different units. We're not exploring everything in there. We're just picking out some points that we think you might find a little bit sticky when you're learning, and giving you some advice on those. And we're giving you some practice exercises through this from both an MCQ, so multiple choice question and assignment point of view. And then finally, before the exams, we think about a revision, but this will also help you when you're doing your assignments. So what do we look for in doing MCQs? What do we look for in assignments when you're writing these out? Because you might have forgotten what it's like to write out an assignment, or what it's like to sit exams. So we give you some practice questions, and we take you through some last minute revision and study advice through that. And that'll be just at the end of the process before you sit about a month before the exams, and before you have to submit your assignments, just to give you some advice in those areas.
Perfect, thank you. So these are the blended learning workshops, which are really useful. By the way, I have taken them when I was doing the course. Finally, just a brief overview of what the path to professional qualifications and developing as a risk professional within the IRM looks like. We have training courses and specialist certificates. And then if you do decide to take one of the international certificates, including the IRM one, which we're talking about today, upon completion, as I mentioned, you are admitted to the first professional membership grade, which is IRMCert. And if you are interested in developing your career within risk management, then you can take the international diploma. And if you have an additional 3 years of experience, you can then become certified member of the IRM. We have a lot of more information about the membership benefits on our website, so feel free to have a look. Amongst them, what I can highlight is the special interest groups and the regional groups, which everyone is welcome to join. But once you are a member, you get assigned to a regional group, and you can join special interest groups which are a great way of networking with other risk professionals. And finally, a call to action. So if you'd like to read more about the course, please scan the first QR code. And if you are happy with everything that we talked about today and you are ready to enroll and supercharge your career, then you can enroll now by scanning the second QR code, and it will take you directly to the application form. So if you have any questions, you can also email the student support team using the email on the bottom of the slide, or just give us a call and we'll be happy to talk to you. So thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate we just run over time. So what I'll do is I can just get the questions from the question box and share it with the presentation recording to everyone that watched afterwards, if that's all right. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
See you soon.